Well, welcome everybody. I've changed the title at least 4 times. Fortunately, since Gina forgot to give a title in the newsletter, it didn't matter anyway. But this, I mean, this title, A Deeper Grace, the End of Lament, is really about what's the benefit of lament? What happens to us if we go through it seriously, especially when our questions are not answered, and the problem or the problems that we are lamenting continue. So that's really what I hope to be exploring through Psalm 77. And I'd like to begin with a song, a contemporary song, which in a way picks up what Andris was, a little bit of what Andris was speaking about last week when he was talking about Latvia, and the sense that the Latvians could well have had over 100 years, maybe 200 years, Andris, my history, Eastern European history is not that good, of lamenting during the Russian and then subsequently, I think, the German conquest and so on. So it's a little bit more focused. This song is a little bit more focused on communal lament, but nevertheless, I think it can set a mood, if you like, for us to move into the psalm. And I love it very much.
When will the truth come out? When will your justice roll down? When will your kingdom come and evil be undone? When will the wicked kneel and the abused be healed? When will our sisters speak with no more shame or fear? How long, when will the daughters of Zion rejoice in the house of the Lord?
Out of the miry clay, we will rise up someday. Sorrow won't always last. The dark will surely pass. Woe to the wicked ones, for what their hands have done. God is our righteous judge, and He will raise us up. So how long, when will the daughters of Zion rejoice in the house of the Lord? So let your justice roll down. Let your justice roll down. Let your justice roll down. Let your rejoice in the house of the Lord.
This seems to oh dear.
If you click stop sharing, I suppose.
I can, oh, stop share. Well, I know that means I close everything down, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Which I don't do.
Ah, sorry.
We'll go back to this and we'll get back. It's a way out of it. Right. Now, why did it do that? That's not the one I want. Sorry about this. I've never had this problem before.
Perhaps if you quit out of PowerPoint and then relaunch PowerPoint.
You just need to close that window.
I've been trying to.
Where the red bar was across the top of it a little while ago.
That's it, is it? That's it. Okay, thank you. No, that's just stop share. That
Right,
one.
now, up there, the little X in the top right-hand corner of at the end of the red bar.
No, I haven't got any. Oh, there. But I shall cut out. No, that will close the entire slideshow down. It's okay. I'm okay now. Don't
I'll
worry.
move to the next slide, okay.
Go on. It'll be okay from now. It's the sound slide. Oh, you see, I didn't. Excuse me about this, but.
John, I think if you follow Howard's advice and click that cross so that you close PowerPoint and then reopen it, you'll be able to go straight to the slide that you want and then bring it back up on the screen for us.
The alternative is just to move to that slide ahead of time.
Now, from that slide, I see nothing. I don't have any instructions. Oh, wait a minute. Let's get out of that way. Now, we should be able to open from there. Okay, thanks. Right, my apologies. Thanks for your advice. Sorry. Okay. So that song was about how long? How long do we have to suffer? Why? Why are these things happening? When will you come and rescue us? When will you solve our problems? Here's a quotation from N.T. Wright, which he wrote in the early days of the pandemic last year. It's no part of the Christian vocation to explain what's happening and why. In fact, it is part of the Christian vocation not to be able to explain and to lament instead. As the Spirit laments within us, so we become, even in our self-isolation, small shrines where the presence and healing love of God can dwell. I think it's a very interesting quotation, not just the focus on, we don't have to know the answer. And as Christians, we have this means of handling this, and it's lament. And as we lament, either in our small, locked down homes, we can become shrines where the presence of God is at work within us, or perhaps once we get out of lockdown, in our small church communities. There were two writers last year, N.T. Wright and Walter Brueggemann, who tried to interpret the pandemic from a Christian perspective. Brueggemann wrote a book called Virus as a Summons to Faith, and as one of the chapters in that book, he examines Psalm 77, and I'm going to borrow from that this evening in my own analysis of the psalm. Oh, dear me. Okay, Psalm 77. Somebody like to read the first 6 lines, please.
I can do that, John. The first 6 verses.
Yes.
Psalm 77. I cry aloud to God. I cry aloud to God, and he will hear me. In the day of my trouble, I have sought the Lord. By night, my hand is stretched out and does not tire. My soul refuses comfort. I think upon God, and I groan. I ponder, and my spirit faints. You will not let my eyelids close. I am so troubled that I cannot speak. I consider the days of old. I remember the years long past. I commune with my heart in the night. My spirit searches for understanding.
You can see how in these first 6 verses, first of all, how disturbed the psalmist is, but also his self-centeredness. I'm going to make him male just because it's a little bit easier. I'm sorry from the gender perspective, but it's very likely to be written by a male, I think. I cry aloud. I seek the Lord. My hand is stretched out. My soul refuses to be comforted. I think of God. I moan. I meditate. I am so troubled. I cannot speak. I consider the days of old. I commune with my heart in the night. I meditate and search my spirit. I'm sure that the psalmist was in a relationship, we could call it a covenantal relationship with God. But at this time in his life, he's consumed with only one thing, his own personal needs. Right, well, I've lost I've lost verses 7 to 9, which I will read for you. So the psalm continues. Will the Lord spurn forever and never again be favorable? Has his steadfast love ceased forever? Are his promises at an end for all time? Has God forgotten to be gracious? Has he in anger shut up his compassion? the psalmist asks if God is faithful. Now, he's no longer addressing God in person. God is in the third person. He speaks, for those of you who've got it open. He speaks for you. He speaks about the steadfast love of God. He speaks about God's graciousness. He speaks about his compassion. But so far as he is concerned, they might as well not exist. In other words, he has the right doctrine. He knows what the teaching is about God, but he just doesn't feel it in his heart. Now, there's no room for blame here in the psalm. Okay, the speaker is, the psalmist is preoccupied, and he's bitterly questioning God and God's failure to act as he sees it. But this is a psalm which is part of worship. It's a psalm. The speaker's being honest before God. And if we are honest before God, it doesn't really matter if we're critical, if we blame him, or even if we shout at him. I mean, God just lets us do that. And in a sense, honesty is a sign that deep down, we still trust him. Whatever we say, whatever criticism of God we make, we know that nevertheless, or we imply nevertheless, that he's not going to leave us altogether. And when you think about it, it was a psalm of lament that was on Jesus's lips, hanging on the cross. My God, why have you forsaken me? Psalm 22. So, honesty with God, being critical with God, openly sharing our feelings of desolation and hurt are something that we shouldn't suppress. They're part of who we are as human beings. They have a place in our worship and in our Christian life. And of course, the Psalms allow that they allow us to express it, to get access to it. And then we move on to verse 10. And I say, this is NRSV, I say, it is my grief that the right hand of the Most High has changed. Now, this isn't a very clear translation, and there are others which I'm not being a Hebrew scholar, I got no idea how reliable these are, but these seem to, the others at least express a degree of clarity over what the psalmist is trying to say here. Then I said, what hurts me most is this, that God is no longer powerful. The New Jerusalem Bible. And I said, this is what wounds me. The right hand of the Most High has lost its strength. New English Bible. Has his right hand, I said, lost its grasp? Does it hang powerless, the arm of the Most High? This is the turning point in the psalm. The psalmist has, in the previous verses, the psalmist has taken a more or less conventional, in inverted commas, understanding of his relationship with God. It's, if I do certain things, you will reward me. But this doesn't seem to be working. God is not answering his prayers. It seems that God is quite other from human beings. He's just not, he doesn't behave like human beings. He is free to change. He's not utterly predictable. Sometimes in preaching we imply that God is more or less predictable. This psalm denies it. And that God inspires awe. So the psalmist is moving, isn't towards a point of decision. Either he goes back to his former faith, which was his former kind of faith, which wasn't getting the answers that he wanted, was not helpful to him in his distress. Or he moves forward and he says, well, I can't control God. He is so much greater than I. And in this new forward movement that is open towards him, it's very threatening, because God is no longer predictable. You can't be sure what is the outcome of the psalmist can't be sure what the outcome of his journey if he continues to go with God. So I think we shall see as we move to the next verse that there is a shift taking place in verse 10, and it's something like a shift from a religion of law, a religion of quid pro quo, and to a religion of grace. I'm not drawing an absolute line there, obviously, but there is a significant move in this direction. It's also a shift from having a culture of our needs met all the time to a culture of relying on God no matter what, even if God is not answering. I wonder if somebody would like to read verse 11, please, if you will unmute yourself and read verses 11 to 14.
Shall I do that then? 11 to 14.
Thank you, Andres.
I will call to mind the deeds of the Lord. I will remember your wonders of old. I will meditate on all your work and muse on your mighty deeds. Your way, O God, is holy. What God is so great as our God? You are the God who works wonders. You have displayed your might among the peoples.
Thank you. How long do you think did it take the psalmist to move from the uncertainty of verse 10, the shock of realizing that God was not to be put in a box that the psalmist could control? How long did it take him to move to this more positive position? We don't know. It might have been a few minutes, it might have been days or months, really, until he had reached this point. But in that time, the speaker has, as it were, recovered his faith, or at least his understanding of God has deepened. How does anyone move from preoccupation with self to leave self behind and to reach out for communion with a God who is totally other than us? the speaker might have taken a turn altogether different. It's unlikely at the time of the Old Testament, but nevertheless, he might have said, there is no God. But instead, in the next verses, the speaker turns and addresses God in person. It is you, or even thou. Now he sees God differently. It's not the agreement that he has with God is no longer one of equal partners. Why did you let me down, O God? What right did you have for letting me down? Now it's a covenant in which one partner surrenders to the other. Not my will, but thine be done. Or, for whoever would save his life would lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake and the gospel's will find it. And of course, most obviously in these verses, the speaker revisits his own past and the past of his community of faith. And his former problems, serious as they appeared at the time, are now set in a wider context, a historical context in which God has acted for his people, and acted, incidentally, in ways that could not have been predicted at the time. So even in those times when God acted, he was acting in an unpredictable way. And there's, just reflect too on the language shift. There are still some I's here, but it's much more about your wonders, your work, your mighty deeds, your way. You are the God who works wonders. You have displayed your might. So the speaker has been set free, as it were, from his quite, the absolutely understandable preoccupation he had with his own problems. We could always find ourselves in such a situation. But he's moved from that. And he's now in relationship with a God who acts, who continues to act in love towards us. But he does so with absolute freedom. And another person, please, to read the final verses.
Shall I do it?
Sarah, I see you've come up on my screen. Would you would you read for us?
So this is verse 15 to the end?
Yep.
Okay. With your strong arm, you redeemed your people, the descendants of Jacob and Joseph. When the waters saw you, O God, when the waters saw you, they were afraid. The very deep trembled. The clouds poured out water, the skies thundered, your arrows flashed on every side. The crash of your thunder was in the whirlwind, your lightnings lit up the world. The earth trembled and shook. Your way was through the sea, your path through the mighty waters, yet your footprints were unseen. You led your people like a flock by the hand of Moses and Aaron.
Thank you. Now, with these verses, we're in a different position altogether. The speaker is addressing God in a spirit of confidence, humility, and warmth. It's actually about the unpredictability of God, the waters, the behavior of the weather, the thunder, the lightning, And in the midst of all these things that cannot be predicted, God leads his people out of Egypt through the waters. Verse 19. Yet your footprints were unseen. What a beautiful phrase. You led your people like a flock by the hands of Moses and Aaron. The questions of verses 1 to 6 have not been answered, but everything has been set in a wider world, in a deeper covenantal relationship. The speaker hasn't got lost in his own preoccupations with his own security and needs. Through grace, he has moved on. So, in conclusion, in this part at least, lament is a process. It is possible to praise too soon. Each stage needs its own space. And the stages we've seen are, first of all, the expression of raw emotions, especially against God, the point of decision making where you can choose to go back to the old grumbling, self-centered relationship where God is there to respond to your own personal needs or to move on in uncertainty. The return to remembering the ways God has worked in the past, in our own lives and in the history of our faith community. And a shift towards a more confident but humble partnership of God that will take us into the unpredictable future. And it's this really that will bring me back to the title that I chose, this last stage, because I think it probably expresses a deeper experience of God's grace than we started out with at the beginning of the psalm. Let's pray. After thinking we were autonomous, we turn back to you. After we have said I for a very long time, we fall back to thou. We speak the thou who lives in our memories, memories of rescue, healing, and forgiveness. We speak the thou who occupies our best hopes as we long for peace, well-being, and justice in the world. We move back into dialogue with you. We say thou as we thank you and praise you. We say thou as we act in the freedom you have given us and accept our responsibility. Just now, still at the risk of the virus, we can say thou honestly and easily. And so we say thou, thou in your power, thou in your mercy, thou in faithfulness. Finally, simply, thou. We remember all your wonders. And then in gladness, we remember we are yours. We begin to walk again with you in gratitude, hope, and confidence. Amen.
Amen.
Well, thank you, everybody. It's been an excellent, for me, it's been an excellent series. I have to do something similar next year.